I'm Adam Weil, partner at White Rabbit Group. Welcome to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we share knowledge, experiences, and motivations from creatives and entrepreneurs. Tyler Pigott. I want to introduce Tyler here for a second. He is a senior sales leader and agency coach. He's got a ton of experience building revenue systems that scale. He's currently the senior director of sales at StoryBrand, where he leads sales strategy and revenue growth across multiple product lines. So he focuses on customer acquisition, strategic upselling, and really developing like high performing sales teams that operate more as a trusted advisor rather than like a transactional seller. The big focus for him. Alongside his role at StoryBrand, Tyler is the co-founder and agency coach of Agency Builders, which is new to me. I've known Tyler for a while, and I've known about Agency Builders for a while, but I did not know he was connected there. If you don't know, Agency Builders is a global community designed to help agency owners, stop spinning their wheels and really build like sustainable, predictable growth. So, through hands-on coaching, Tyler works with founders to design sales systems that scale and really drive that long-term profitability. So really excited to talk with him. He sits, I would say, at kind of the intersection of like sales leadership, messaging clarity, and like operational discipline. So a great voice for marketers, agency leaders, and founders really trying to navigate growth. So Tyler, happy to have you on.
Well, this is so fun. I feel like listening to an intro is like, all right. Yeah, right. Come on, just let's get to it. No, it's great. It's fun to hear some of the stuff I get to be involved in because I don't think about all that like that all that often. So,
dude, well, I had to shorten it up a little bit because I didn't even mention LoanFur, your previous agency, which
that's right.
Was acquired by Hawk Media.
Yeah.
So and we've worked together through LoanFur primarily, and then I think you helped me get in contact with Hawk Media, and we've done some work for them too. So,
oh, nice. That's awesome. I didn't realize that.
Connections, man.
Heck yeah, that's rad. That's super cool. Yeah, I feel like I did a project with White Rabbit. This was maybe not 10 years ago, but possibly. Because Greg lived up this way. I guess no, it was before he moved. It was in Chico still, and that was forever ago. I think if you followed his journey at all, anybody listening, he's lived in a couple places since then. So
he has.
Yeah, no, that's wild. I didn't really put together how long that's been, but yeah, that's awesome. I love that you guys were able to do some stuff with Hawk. They're great humans and a cool organization there. So
yeah, they're not too far from me. I'm down in San Diego, and you're up in Pacific Northwest. Where exactly?
Yeah, I'm in a town called Gig Harbor, which is like an hour south of Seattle.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool
so
spot.
you got a chance to meet Greg when you were up there, I imagine.
Yeah, numerous times. Yeah. We met up in Seattle. I think there's a potential that you and I've met in Seattle. I know I've friended you at like HubSpot events and several other different things, but like maybe you were up one time.
I totally forgot about that. I think it was like Optimism or something like that. Like one of the breweries, which I think has changed names since then.
I'm sure 28 times since then. But yeah, I think that's right. It was like down the street from whatever office that White Rabbit was at that phase of growth kind of thing.
Dude, that's funny. That was when I just started at White Rabbit. Yeah.
How long have you been at White Rabbit?
6 years now. Almost.
Okay, so it probably was roughly, maybe a year or two before that potentially when we were doing some projects. So that's super cool. I love it. Can't speak high enough of it. This is not the podcast to just sing White Rabbit's praises from the rooftops, but anybody listening, it's worth a conversation if you're looking for help. So
appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Well, let me ask you some questions. I'd love to pull some wisdom out of you here. So let's talk about like vision. Okay. So in your experience, I want to start here. Like, what's the first sign that an agency lacks a clear vision, especially when it comes to scaling? I feel like you're really big on helping companies grow up properly so things don't fall apart. So what are the signs that you look for?
Yeah. Good question. I think, I'll split it in two because I think it's two parts to it. One would be like, signs of, a lack of vision or whatever, but also just from a scaling standpoint, it can be different. Cause I think that, I just got to get the opportunity to talk to agency owners and people running marketing firms and American consultants and freelancers and stuff just all the time at this point. And, everybody has a different reason Some people I'm totally great being a one person shop with a couple contractors, maybe make a couple hundred grand a year, have some flexibility. And then there's others that, hey, I want 100 staff members and want to sell it for $10 million someday or more than that.
Hmm.
So I think it just kind of depends on the person that might have that vision. I think like from a just thinking about scale and getting to work with lots of agencies about kind of where they're at now versus maybe aspirationally where they want to get to. A couple things kind of stick out to me. One is I've oftentimes just like can tell really fast if they really are operating in a vision like, hey, I want to grow this thing.
Mm,
And one of the signs is that they're kind of taking every opportunity that possibly comes in. And so
mm,
it's kind of like that shiny object syndrome. Like anybody that has a checkbook or anybody that has money, I'll do a project for them.
right.
And that usually communicates that they don't really have a focus, which means that it's going to be really hard to actually put any sort of like, call it like strategic steps or whatever you want to call it to help them kind of achieve what they're trying to go after, just because
Right.
they'll be pulled in any direction and do kind of anything for anybody.
Yeah.
And then, so there's that one. And then my favorite thing to do is just talk to people on the team and
Mm,
just go, hey, if they don't understand what like they're building towards, then there's probably a pretty significant chance that the organization doesn't really have that vision for scale. Maybe they're just like executing tasks or something like that.
sure.
Um, I'd say like a couple things for people to work on would be like, ICPs or ideal client profiles. Like if they don't have like a specific or even a couple, people probably want to fight me over this that, hey, it's really helpful to have some version of a specific client to go after.
Hmm.
Um, People say that all the time, but then oftentimes we talk to marketers and they never want to have like a certain focus of people that they work with or industries or, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I think if they don't have a clear like ICP, it makes it a little bit tough to know how to scale because you're not really sure if the like network or the pool of people you could work with is big enough to scale to whatever they want to. So a
Mm,
couple like those are like quick things to kind of
right.
hit with, but um yeah, I mean, I think that oftentimes it's just, the idea of how you would get to some version of like predictable growth or at least predictable patterns towards growth that you can kind of really kind of lean into or experiment with, depending on the stage of growth for the agency.
Yeah.
That's kind of like some of the stuff that I've seen that I'm like looking at kind of like from an outside perspective, trying to figure out like, do they have a vision for this? Maybe
Yeah.
the early stage or something like that. And the crazy part about agencies is that there can be pretty decent sized agencies that kind of just fell into it.
Mm,
Like they
mhm.
didn't have this like perfectly step by step plan, which is awesome. It's great that that's possible. It's just sometimes it makes it harder to scale from that standpoint because they've just kind of fallen into it and I haven't really put in a ton of work as far as like where
Mm.
my boundaries or guardrails or whatever to keep me on the road kind of thing. So
Yeah, it's a good point, right? There sometimes just through the network, the referrals, some
yeah,
really excellent hires, they just, have a really smart team.
totally.
They kind of end up in a situation where I imagine if they want to then scale or, triple the amount of growth at that point, if that foundation isn't solid, even if it's a large agency, yeah, it could crumble or,
Yeah.
have problems.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it also, when you're thinking about scale, most of the time agencies are, I'll call them sales driven. Like there's very few agencies that are, self-service checkout, if you will, like as far as like attracting prospects, it just happens like organically. They don't actually have to talk to somebody in the process. They just buy something that happens.
Hmm.
Yes, those exist. Yes, there's outliers, but the standard agency or kind of classic agency that's somewhere in the middle, you have to talk to a salesperson. And so
Yeah.
most of the time your, founders or people that are starting the agency, partners, whatever, are able to get to a certain, call it revenue number, team size, whatever their measurement is by
Yep.
them doing all the sales. But
Yep.
the minute you have to train a salesperson or bring somebody in, you're going to have to answer a lot of questions around specific products you sell, productization of things, solutions that you have, industries you want to focus on, like just all of the, I'll call them basic kind of like foundational elements of
Yep.
things that a salesperson wants to know.
Yep.
So in some ways, when you're trying to scale, hiring a salesperson the first time is probably the best exercise.
Mm,
Because of the fact that they're going to ask you the questions and you're going to have to give them the answer if you want them to be successful,
right.
that will help you kind of really start to outline what you're trying to do. So
Yep.
if you do have some of the answers to some of those questions beforehand, in a lot of ways, you're able to scale a little bit easier, at least in the early days of kind of like low hanging fruit kind of stuff, just because of
Yep.
the fact that you're further along maybe than some of the agencies that haven't done some of that work. So
Right, right, right. What about, so I want to go back to the ICP,
yeah,
knowing the ICP, you mentioned earlier, it's a bad sign if you're taking on anyone who has a checkbook, but I feel like there's layers to it. Like you can
sure,
almost over correct if you go too specific,
yeah,
like for example, White Rabbit, we focus on agencies, and I wonder what is the right, like, how do we dial that in properly, right? Because some of our salespeople can look at an agency and go, "Hey, it's an agency. Like they're successful,
yeah,
they're on for a while, they do beautiful work." But then our account team may look at them and go, "Well, they're not sending us a large enough deal. They don't know how the development process works, so they're questioning every single thing." So, like, I don't know. Do you have any insight on like what's the healthy amount of dialing in to do?
yeah. I mean, it is a good like question to not just rely strictly on like gut instinct. I mean, I think you want to do a little bit of research to figure out if like I'm working with an agency right now, and they're um, kind of when they came to me, they were like really excited about this is their focus they have. They're super pumped about it, and it was like big scale municipal utilities. So think of like power services, energy, like some of those types of things in cities. Which is awesome. You're like, oh, cool. You've got like this very specific, focus, but then you start to like dissect that buyer that's, that person that you're going to actually sell those services to from a marketing side. And
Right,
you start to ask questions of, well, how often are they making decisions? What are their budgets like? What kind of work are they looking to have done? And then you have to then pair that also with, okay, how fast are you trying to close deals? What's your average deal size you're looking for? Just some of like I'll call them like ancillary things that you almost aren't considering part of your like ideal. Because most people, when you say ideal client profile, they're like, what vertical are they in or what industry are they in? And I mean, I think that's important, but I'd also say there's sometimes you can build your ICP based on more so kind of what you're looking to do from a sales standpoint.
mm,
If you're selling, like at our agency, like when I ran an agency, we went pretty quickly to like smaller projects that were faster sales cycles.
mm,
And then we'd sell like 90-day retainers essentially that would, auto renew, but it would keep us hungry to pitch new services and kind of stack them together.
right,
Which was different than what we did. When I first started, it was trying to get those 12-month retainers and all those types of things, which just got harder to sell kind of as 2020 approached and, in that season when budgets were a little bit more challenging.
right,
But we were looking for businesses that actually would make those types of decisions versus ones that would be like call it a 6 month or a year sales cycle.
yep,
Some businesses, that's what they're looking for. That wasn't what we
yeah,
were looking for. So, I mean, I think there's lots of factors to it. I think there's tech involved with it. Oftentimes will work with people about horizontal niches. And so it's kind of like, hey, we're a web development firm. Oh, no way. What do you guys build on? We'll build on anything. Wow, that's amazing that you're able to build on Squarespace to Webflow to Drupal to, or like, like if you don't have anything that
yeah,
you're kind of guiding it, just, I mean, you guys do love development and have a big team. And you're probably just platforms you guys won't touch,
yep,
and it's kind of like, it's helpful to like start just like knocking things down as far as like, oh, we won't do that. We won't do that. Okay. What is kind of our sweet spot?
yep,
But it's helpful to look at all the factors, I guess, is what I was going to say. As far as, industry is important because once you've sold to an industry for so long, you just know their problems and challenges and what keeps them up at night, all those types of things
mhm,
better than if you sell to a lot of different kind of industries.
yep,
So I think that can be helpful. Again, I've talked about this for so many years and know that there are people listening that will probably want to fight me afterwards saying that you shouldn't do this. I just know I'm a sales guy at this
yeah,
point, and so I'm going to walk into your organization and go, sounds good. So how do I fill my pipeline? Who do you want me to fill that with?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah,
you're going to not be able to answer me because it's going to be anybody with a paycheck or, with a bank account. And you're like, that's not helpful. I literally don't even know where to start.
right,
So I think just as you're building and scaling, it is helpful to go in that direction. So, and some people listening are fully, high fiving and saying, absolutely, but
yeah,
the ICP work can be, I'm trying to paint a broad picture that, I would say it's a lot of factors, not just, hey, what industry or what
right.
vertical or those kind of things. So I don't even know if that makes sense. bit
Yeah.
rambly, but
Yeah. I mean, it does. It sounds like you're saying it's sure, you start with the industries and everything and look at what you
sure.
have deep experience in and you maybe enjoy doing. And then go maybe a couple layers deep in terms of pricing or other,
Yeah.
traits that you're looking for.
Yeah, that kind of stuff's super helpful. I always just oftentimes start like if I'm asking an agency owner or a agency or a team and just kind of go, what kind of clients do you guys like working with?
Mm,
Because I mean, we all know, and I'm not going to sit here and name industries just based on not getting in trouble, but we all know there's some industries that kind of jackwagons work in. Like just
yeah.
people that you're like, I don't want to hang out with them,
Yeah.
which probably means you're not going to be an awesome client.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, don't work with those industries and there's nothing wrong with that. I'd also say it's going to be way easier to market and get your name or, and awareness and those types of things out to certain industries or networks or whatever of things that you actually are excited about.
Mm,
Whether that's a product thing. I love technology. I think it's just fun to subscribe to new software and try it and use it and break it and all the things. And I just think that's fun. I know that that just classified me as a total nerd and that's okay. Um, but like it was helpful. It was fun for us to go after like tech based companies when I ran an
yeah.
agency because I was passionate about that and it was fun. And it
Yep.
was easy to you know, buy the software, then to then have the inside scoop of what they could do differently to make suggestions and add value and then potentially go get that client.
Right.
Comparatively to an industry that I don't really care about or have no passion or no interest in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would say for most founders, if you haven't nailed an ICP, start there.
Yeah.
It's going to be way more fun to figure out how to dissect that and kind of build your ideal kind of client based on things you're actually interested in working with. So
Yeah. One of the things that Corey Quinn
yeah,
about, he wrote the book Anyone, Not Everyone. And
uh-huh.
it just he explains so clearly how when you're hiring your first salesperson, if you have a super clear niche, it's so much easier to onboard that person.
Yeah,
And especially if they're in an industry that you really like and you know all the nuances of it, like gosh, that's such a great setup for a successful onboarding process.
yeah, yeah, for sure. When I took over the sales crew at StoryBrand, let's see, there's five, maybe, yeah, five salespeople when I started, and they sold everything, every product,
Mm.
and it was fine. Like it was like, oh, this is fine, we can make this work. But then the minute it was time for me to hire, my first addition to that team, we had to separate it and go, okay, you guys are selling these products, you guys are selling these products, and kind of like move it around because I couldn't onboard someone that had the historical knowledge and there'd
Yep.
been lots of products launched since some of those people had been there. And
Yeah.
so it did require us to have like a specific, like, hey, this is the market you're selling into, the industry you're selling into, the type of buyer, this
Yep.
is our solution for them. It was just, we couldn't train on, 6, 7, 8 products all at once. We had to kind of pick one or two that kind of fit in some version of a similarity. So
Yeah. Doesn't it feel good too when you're as a salesperson? And I think Alex Ramosi talks about this, how saying no, like you don't do something, it can build trust, especially early on, where it's like,
yeah,
no, we don't do that, and we don't do that, and we suck at that actually.
yeah,
This thing, we crush it at, and we can
yeah,
definitely help you. It's like, I
yeah,
love that. You can't do that if you're trying to just be a chameleon all the time.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it has to do with kind of how you're wired and what your interest is. And as far as I've always been like a long term play kind of guy. Like I'm not. I mean, sure, yeah, you need the short term stuff and balance, quick wins, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
like if you're not playing the long game, probably you're not saying no to anything
Yeah.
because you need it right now. But if you're actually trying to build something and create momentum and increase the size of the wave, if you will, kind of thing is what you're trying to do.
Right.
Saying no is unreal because you know that you're building trust in the midst of that. There's a chance that the person you said no to changes jobs 3 times and 2 years later comes back to you and says, hey, that was really impactful. I now work with this kind of organization. Can we have a conversation? I
Right.
bet that's happened to me 2 or 3 dozen times.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, okay, but like it's just part of it's just like I know my playground, if you will. I know where the boundaries are. Like I know what's yes and what's no.
Yep.
And sometimes I've been bad at that, right? Like I'm not perfect at it by any means, but I just would say like it's fascinating when you play the long game and you actually have some boundaries as far as like these are the types of clients we'll work at, or at least what we're good at, how we can get outcomes for and deliverables for that are excellent. And then being able to like even have people you can pass stuff off to. Like I think I've sent a couple different random projects here and there to White Rabbit over the years. And it's, hey, we probably don't need to touch this. This is like development only, and we
Yeah.
don't have the capacity in house. And so we don't need to like run it through us to just somehow pass through kind of thing. And that's kind of odd.
Yeah.
So it's just helpful to be able to do that kind of stuff. I think it helps build your personal brand and your company kind of brand as well.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, it's you brought it up. So, I mean, I'll just tell you, like, we play matchmaker all the time, and it's
Yeah,
like that, it just karmically that it always comes back around. And
totally.
it just feels good being able to like set them up with someone that's awesome. And again, when they need something, I can confidently say, yes, we can definitely help you. And it just, there's instant trust there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So what do you think is the maybe the most important thing right now for agencies? We're going into 2026. Agencies are, I think, are doing a lot of planning right now. They're sort of thinking
Mhm.
ahead. I think there's a lot of fear that I sense out there. Not with everyone, but there's a lot of agencies that feel there's a lot of change happening with AI processes. There's been some layoffs in some of the larger agencies,
Yeah.
which from what I can tell, some of those folks are actually starting up their own smaller agencies. So it's a really interesting time, and I'm just curious, what's your perspective and outlook on going into the new year, and what do you think that founders and small agency owners should be thinking about right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one is like I would say uh historically agencies, especially over the last like call it like 10 to 15 years when everything's kind of gone digital, like like most agencies now have a digital arm, if not exclusively all things digital. Most agencies I've found are kind of pushing the envelope, if you will, of what's possible in some whatever the tech is. So in
Mm,
this case, I would say that I know a lot of agency owners that are deeply building things in AI and so fascinated by it and it's making their jobs easier, challenging. They could do more, whatever.
right.
It's fascinating to be in the seat that I'm in because I half of my or three-fourths of my brain talks to agency owners and marketers and consultants and stuff all the time. The other half of it talks to large companies, large brands that StoryBrand sells services into. And the amount of businesses trying to figure out what to do with AI, like the concept being they can't use it internally because it's not quote unquote approved and they bring their personal laptop to run Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, is fascinating to me. Of
Mm,
like, they haven't figured it out yet. So
yeah.
I think that there's some unbelievable opportunities for agencies to, you've got to be forward thinking. You've got to think about how do you make your product better and more efficient and all these types of things. But you've got to be like also thinking about how can you bring clients along with you. I think
Mm,
there's a lot of agencies that have a lot of kind of, I'll call it like almost like fear of what the heck is AI going to do and all these types of things. And I
mm,
think it's in some ways like, how do you shift your mentality to what does this make possible? Are there things that you couldn't do before that you can do, or more efficiency or whatnot?
mhm.
Um, I'd also say like, your like clients kind of know, like they can run the same queries, if you will, or prompts, if you will, in AI that you can now.
Right.
And so, as far as like execution and excellence and communicating your how and your process, and this is how you get repeatable results for clients, I think is of more importance now than it's ever been.
Mm,
Just because of the fact that you can't just show up and, go into your cave for 3 months and come back out and hand them something. They just don't know what they're getting. And so there are still a lot of agencies that do that, and you're kind
yeah.
of going, what's your repeatable frameworks that you follow that just, are proven that that you're going to actually get the client outcomes that they're looking for.
Mm,
I just think that's of more importance now than it's ever been. I think I've got lots of thoughts around the different things people could do and products people can create and all those types of things. But I think in general, just the idea of how do you bring clients with you.
mm, mhm.
And so I've just been on enough calls with agencies where they're talking about like things that they're doing for their clients and things they're building really fast and just not even charging them for it because it took them 20 minutes.
Mm,
And just knowing the goodwill that's creating. And like, again, it's kind of the concept being, hey, I'm bringing them with us.
yep.
They're going to stay with you a lot longer if you are helping them with whatever they're struggling with.
Yeah.
And, not trying to nickel and dime everything and it's time and materials. It's all these things like,
Yeah.
showing value, I think, is so important at this point in the world.
Yeah.
I'd say the last thing I'd say too about that when I say showing value, it just reminds me of most marketers in general or creatives in general aren't super awesome at self promotion.
Mm,
And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not great at it. But I would say it's also really important to communicate to your clients what you're doing for them
mhm.
and what you've done for them and what you've learned from what you've done for them and what you're going to do with what you learned for them. Because of the fact they don't know that. You think they do, or you're in it every day. They're not. You have numerous calls and tasks and projects every day with clients doing the similar kind of work. They might have one a month or one a week or however often they talk to you. And
Yeah.
so just like bringing them along, like you've got to constantly communicate, what you're doing for them, what you did do for them, what you're going to do for them, and maybe even what you're learning and then what you're going to do with that learning. I just think
Yeah.
you're showing value and proving that you're good at what you do. I think it's of more importance now than it's ever been. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's good feedback. I like the idea of kind of bringing them along because it aligns too with what you said earlier about, or I think what I said earlier about your during the intro about
yeah,
being a trusted advisor. It really
sure.
kind of fits into that sort of approach and just saying, hey, look, this is something we're learning and we want to apply it and we're gonna contribute to the learning effort and learning curve here and we want to be transparent about that
Yeah,
and we think it's gonna help you. So, let's do it versus like this behind the scenes. It's like the ChatGPT version versus like Apple's big reveal.
yeah,
It feels like kind of an outdated model these days. Like you really got to be kind of building the plane while you're flying it, sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
But I
that's
think it's important to communicate that you're building the plane
yeah,
because I don't honestly think there's a lot of like assumption that's included with, an agency or, a consultant or marketer or whatever that's doing all the work, and just hoping the client sees that they're doing that work because they're doing it. So of course they see it.
right,
I just don't think they do. And so oftentimes they don't know what they're doing or
yeah,
what you're doing rather. And they're just often are just assuming you just doing this working on this black box, whatever, and you just come out with this thing. So it's just important to constantly be communicating. I remember when we had clients, you try to figure out how to communicate with every client a little bit uniquely. I know that sounds overwhelming to some people, but there is an element where there's some people that just, hey, if you drip on them every other day what you're doing, they are so pumped. They
mm,
will never ask you ever again if you're adding value.
mm,
Those same people, though, if you don't communicate them but once a month,
yeah,
you're going to have to resell your proposal and quotes and everything all the time because they don't naturally think about what you're doing, And so
yep,
I just think it's of importance to constantly be showing your value and not overdoing
yeah,
it. Don't be weird about it. It doesn't have to be super formal, but
yep.
just this concept that you're constantly communicating it, I think is important.
I love that feedback, and I'm thinking about with White Rabbit too. Like we've gotten some feedback before from longtime partners where they're like, "Oh, you guys do Shopify? We had no
Yeah.
idea." And so that's an example of us just not explaining our services properly. I think what you're talking about is more so reminding them of the value that you're providing on a regular basis. Uh, but you don't want to do that in an authentic way and sort of
Yeah.
force it on them. So, any thoughts on like how to organically do that?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I mean, it is funny how, I mean, all of us do it. We've got a friend that, oh yeah, that person, they work in like ecom, or, oh yeah, they work at Microsoft, or they must be this way. And you're like, no, they have a million other things they do or whatever. Like you just
Yeah,
oftentimes all of us are looking for like the drawer to put the person in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's the same thing with agencies because oftentimes agencies or marketers do so many things. It's like they came in and you helped them set up whatever tech stack, took you 3 months, and then they didn't even know you did all these other things. And all of a sudden they've went out and found somebody else.
Right.
So there is an element of like, how do you communicate what you do and problems you solve for people and just constantly.
Hmm.
I think that in this day and age, you have to do it all the time.
Mm,
Like you just have to say it over and over and over and over again until people just remember it, and it's just this thing that they're obviously going to go to. And so I think there's lots of different ways you can do that, but I think just the idea that you're just constantly dripping like these hopefully helpful things to people is really important. sometimes you just do have to also have to figure out, like, I remember when I ran an agency, we had a certain individual on our team and we call them the wow person. And essentially their job was to really hunt down the people, like stalk them in a really kind of funny way. But
Mm,
I learned this from the real estate industry. And I just have a couple people that I know that have sold unbelievable houses kind of in the Seattle area. And then you're like, how do you do this and keep doing it? And they had someone that literally studied the buyer. What do they like? What do
mm,
they shop? When's their anniversary, their birthday? Like, I mean, every detail about the person.
mm,
And so then you're able to then hyper focus on, hey, I bought whatever, call it chocolates for holidays for every one of my clients. But I
mhm.
know that this client doesn't like chocolate. Why are you sending them chocolate? Like, this is so weird.
Yeah,
And so I would say it's the same concept with communication
yeah,
is if you know that your client's not on social media, but you put all your content around before and afters and all this, cool material and content and whatnot that you've produced that shows everything you do and they don't see it, figure out a different way to send it to them because they're not going to see it.
yeah.
So it's kind of like that same concept of one of the things we did at our agency was we set a goal for upsells and like inside sales kind of concept, like
Mm,
upsells for each account manager.
mhm.
And we started small and, it wasn't like this weird, hey, hit your quota thing, but it was way more about how do you teach people to constantly be looking for opportunities where we can help them.
Mm,
And most of the time in agency land, that looks for other additional services we could add. But
mhm,
it also then motivates that account manager or that relationship manager in quotes to
mhm.
then make sure they're studying the customer to figure out what do they need? Where are they at? How do I communicate with them? If they don't read their email, it always gets lost. I'm sending an email, sending a text follow up, or hitting them on the LinkedIn DM or whatever. Hey, just want to make sure you saw this? Like,
Right.
it's kind of like a sales role, but also, you've already landed the clients, you're having to keep selling them. So
Yep.
clearly, I have a lot of thoughts on that on that concept, but I think it's really important because
Yeah.
clients will walk away if you don't constantly sell them. Like, they
Yeah.
will disappear because they were going to find somebody else that communicates the 7 things they do, and even though you did all those 7, the client didn't know that you did, and that's not the client's fault most of the time. So
Right, right. That's a good point. Yeah, the sale is like never done, right? It's like you
yeah,
constantly have to resell them.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
And
really
part
good
of that's interesting of like if you think about like retail brands that all of us follow, and you're like, gosh, if Nike just would stop making commercials about running shoes. Well, they don't, but guess how many people wear Nike running shoes? Like, maybe a bad example for some people, but I'm like, they're just constantly figuring out different ways to communicate what they do well for people, what problem they solve. And it's like, I would say most brands that you follow that are successful or are known, they're just great at that. Figure
Yeah,
out new ways to communicate what they do. And so I think just the same concept of, if you're in web dev, like, why are you not showing every single site you launched and figuring out a way to highlight different features and what it used to look like versus what it looks like now? And I mean,
yep.
all the different things that you possibly could do. And you're just doing it over and over and over again,
Yeah, yeah.
which is the hard part about scale for most founders. To
Mm,
get back to kind of some of our topic is most founders like to do a lot of different things. It's like they're, generalists maybe, and they're more entertained and excited about like kind of wonder and invention, if you will, to use a working genius term.
mhm,
Um, but the idea of like just repetitive systems and
mm,
keep, designing your plays and just keep running those plays and slight optimism, optimization of those plays is pretty boring for most founders.
sure.
And so it makes it really tough to then figure out like how, if a founder is super involved, they've either got to be like crazy disciplined to kind of like run their plays,
Yep,
or they've got to be able to hand off some authority and responsibility to different people on their team to run those plays for them. But
right.
it's the same thing for like, you've got to just like market as far as like tell people what problem you solve. And then you've also then got to tell people what problem you solve. And then you also need to tell them what problem you solve. And you just, it's like you just keep doing it,
Yeah, yeah.
which I'd say is that one of the hardest parts of scale for most founders is because of the fact that they just get bored. And
Mm,
some don't, but a lot of them do.
interesting. As you were explaining that, the repetitiveness of it, it made me think of marketing and marketing's role.
Hmm.
How do you think about marketing and sales? You describe yourself as a salesperson, but someone might look at you and say, "Well, you're really a marketer." Like, how do you think about those two concepts?
That's a good question. Um, I don't know if I've ever had a job where I don't do both, which is funny. I'm just trying to think of like, I've never had like oh, I'm number, 128 on the sales team kind of thing. And I'm just responsible for the quota. I shouldn't say I never have. I've done that for short periods of time.
Hmm,
That's not like I just get bored because I am doing the exact same thing over and over and over again.
sure.
Most of the jobs that I've had have been some sort of mixture of both. And if they're not, like I don't run any marketing initiatives at StoryBrand, but I generally talk to the marketing team like a couple times a day. And it's a lot of it's just because I'm trying to like go upstream of like, hey, this is what prospects are saying, problems they're trying, objections we're trying to handle, things that they're unaware of on calls. Like, I'm just, feeding it upstream to like try to figure out how do you further qualify opportunities, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I think you're kind of always marketing because I'd even say most salespeople, like it's a luxury if you're doing like a one call close with one follow up email.
Right.
Most of the time, the concept of sales is dragging people across the finish line. Like
Yeah.
you've got to go get them, which usually means you're probably having to like reactivate that opportunity, which usually would be, could be classified as you're needing to continue to market to them.
Right.
The amount of like, hey, just checking in emails you can send is probably zero. So you really should figure out a way to like, utilize marketing in a different way or,
Yeah.
if they podcast, cutting up the podcast and finding the place where they, answer the certain question a little bit differently and sending it to them in a video clip or whatever. Like,
Right.
I think you just are, I mean, in my sales world, I've always just tried to figure out how do you get people's attention and have pattern interrupts.
Hmm.
And so the amount of hilarious things that I've done in my life around, driving to certain places, buying certain products, taking pictures in front of businesses, like, and so it's not necessarily that you're marketing, but you're trying to like get, you're capturing the attention of people, which is
Yeah.
basically the same thing as marketing. That you're trying to
Mhm.
get them to kind of respond to something or, get a meeting or whatever that
Mm.
action is that you're trying to get them to do. So I think in some ways, salespeople are always marketing. It's just
Mm.
not a traditional, it's more of like a one-to-one marketing versus a one-to-many marketing,
Sure.
which I would argue is probably the differentiator between most like kind of traditional organizations that have a marketing team and a sales team.
Right.
Um, so many thoughts around that because a lot of things we did in agency was like kind of just trying to get sales and marketing to shake hands, like reach across the table. You guys are on the same team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you'll help each other. Marketing oftentimes gets stuck on metrics and hey, we deliver what we're supposed to, and but then the sales team can't hit their revenue quotas or whatever, and you're like, hey, it all works together.
Yeah.
So that's what we used to do. So I think probably it's kind of both and marketers also should probably try to figure out how to be salespeople, and then vice versa. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was just curious about that, like how you kind of think about those, because it does seem like it's trickier for salespeople. Like,
yeah,
you know, we tried cold calling for a period of time, and
sure,
the answer rate. I'm sure it still works for certain people out there, but the answer rate is really plummeted. And
hmm,
I think Apple now has like a spam detector thing, and
totally,
you can. It's just really hard to cut through, and that used to be an incredibly powerful channel.
yeah,
Same with email.
yeah,
We had like a 20% cold email reply rate like
dang,
4 or 5 years ago. Crushed.
sure,
It's amazing.
yeah,
And now it's 2, 3, 4% top, which is still great, but like it's just
yeah,
plummeted. So it does seem like salespeople, really effective salespeople, are doing more marketing out of the box strategies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rarity for a salesperson to make a career on inbound leads only, which I would say inbound leads only meaning marketing generated that lead and somehow qualified him and then passed him in.
Right.
And so then you're thinking about, well, like, if it's a salesperson, maybe say it's 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever. And the salesperson still has to go figure out how to like start generating pipeline based on their own activities and what are those activities. And so,
Yeah.
whether, like you say, cold calling or email or whatever that looks like. I mean, I think people are constantly looking for what the next is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for the most part, like I still generate opportunities by just adding value.
Mm, mhm.
So I just comment on people's posts on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn a lot and I generate a lot of sales ops based on it. And it's just, and I'm not really doing anything special other than just coming through. I've got my algorithm set up to only have me talk to marketers for the most part.
Mhm.
Got different lists, used several different tools,
Yep.
but I'm just trying to add value. And that's how I've chosen to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not trying to like, just hit a quota or whatever. I have those, but I just go, I have my number. I need 20 qualified conversations a month and I'll hit my number pretty easy.
Yep.
And so then that's what I'm playing against. And so I'm just using a different technique. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it requires to be a little bit marketing wise where you're adding value or trying to find the people that, right people, right time with the challenge or the problem that that you solve. So
Right. Right. And so I know we don't have too much time, but I have so many questions. Like, you know, for someone that's maybe on the newer side of things, I think that what would be helpful for them to know is, what systems in place, should they start establishing. I'm sure they have some systems in place. So it might be helpful for them to know, like, am I on the right track?
yeah.
But then also for maybe a more mature agency audience, what can they do to really scale up further?
Hmm.
I love to hear wherever you want to go with that question.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. I would say like if you're on the smaller side, smaller team, call it sub 20 or sub 15 or something like that. Probably you're selling yourself. Like probably it's there's one like the founder's still selling, sales. There's nothing wrong with that. If you like to sell or sell, awesome, go for it. Keep doing it. I think that the best like move I ever made from scaling was hiring a salesperson, and I love to sell, and I still sold a lot.
Mm,
But what it makes you do is wrestle with the challenging questions. Like it makes you go, well, who do we talk to, and what like we just riffed on like channels you use and techniques and all these things. Well, as a founder, you just kind of do it. You don't really think about, am I in this lane or that lane? And so the ability to like take it out of your head and put it on a document or whatever and hand it to a salesperson, go, hey, do this.
mhm,
And not that, you want to hire people, but I don't know how many hundreds of war stories I've heard about. Well, tried to hire a salesperson. It didn't work.
mm,
And you're like, huh, well, they've sold elsewhere and they got a job after you in sales and they've been successful. Could this potentially be you needing to kind of build out some version of a system versus not having one?
mhm,
And that's also what I advise salespeople if they're going to work at an agency. Hey, are you the first salespeople or the first salesperson? And if they say yes, I go, are you sure you want to do this?
mm,
And it's just because you're walking into just an entrepreneurial world and there's nothing wrong with it.
yeah,
But I would say that, kind of really defining in some ways, like defining your why a little bit, like, hey, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to scale? I've worked with enough, like even just starting marketing agencies and stuff. And they always will say, I really want to make it to $1 million.
mm,
And which I think is so cool. Then I go, why? Because I would argue that there is a kind of death valley between 1 million and 1.5 million for agencies
mm,
because they're not big enough to hire like the next version of senior leadership, but
mm,
but they're too big to not have anybody. And
mhm,
they're truly trying to figure the founder is wearing like 30 hats and has to wear them at a high level and is scrambling for payroll and doesn't have all the support that like, so
mhm,
it's kind of this like, well, you have to kind of get past that, and so you got to keep growing. I'd argue once you hire one person, you've got to keep hiring. Like it's not
yeah,
like one person and that's it. So kind of your whys and like what's important to you, why are you doing it? Who do you serve and the outcomes you want to create, like some of those types of things.
mhm,
I would say the best thing that ever happened to me was success. But also the worst thing that ever happened to me was success because of the fact that when you're losing everything, that successful thing doesn't matter as much. So I'll just use money as an example. I've had seasons where I've made tons of money. I've had seasons where I've lost tons of money. In the seasons that I've lost tons of money, I learned the most that it doesn't matter if I'm focused on the right things.
mm,
And in the seasons where I've made lots of money, that also doesn't matter if I'm focused on the right things. So money definitely doesn't solves things because you can just hire as much as you want to throw
what are
people.
the right
But
things? What do you mean by that?
yeah, so I had to define early in my career what success meant to me. So success to me means watching other people win.
Mm,
And so I love being able to like help and enable and like pour into someone, if you will, or train them to the spot of where they're getting where they want to go. And it's so cool to see them win. Generally, the money takes care of itself, the revenue takes care of itself, that kind of stuff when that's your focus. If your only focus is dollars, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'm not here to, I'm not here to preach or anything. It's more of like, there's nothing wrong with that, but just know that that's then your driver. That's your first filter to make decisions through. That's how you're going to decide who you're going to hire or services you're going to offer, clients you're going to take, ways you're going to spend it.
mm,
And it doesn't necessarily add up to the things that you think it will.
Mm,
if you have a lot of it or none of it or any of those things. And again, I've had seasons with lots of money and seasons with no money. But I think I had to redefine what that meant for me. And this is all back to my why. I'll like
mm,
be able to answer that why,
mhm,
which then, I mean, and it was, I would say at first for me, it was achieving the things I wanted to. Most of those were revenue numbers because I thought that's what was a driver. And then I realized pretty quickly I was trying to build what somebody else had built or what
mm,
somebody else was building.
mm.
And that doesn't really work either because it's kind of you get there or you don't get there and you gauge yourself against them and they're moving and you're not moving or both or whatever.
Yep.
And so I think just really defining your why when you're small is really helpful. And small is not bad. And so just hear me say that too of like oftentimes people think that if they're small, they're not growing,
Mm.
but it doesn't always mean that. Like you can grow in a lot of different ways. You know, if you what's the book I just read to give them a plug? Is it Sahil Bloom that wrote the 5 types of wealth? It was like in the last year.
Mm.
And it talks about like spiritual, mental, emotional. Obviously, finance is also part of that. But like there's elements where you can be really successful in certain areas, and too much of one thing is generally bad, you know, from food to fitness to money to whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think just, I mean, I'm harping on this, but defining your why is really important because
Yeah.
I think there's going to be seasons where it's going to suck and you've got to figure out a way to make it through those. There's going to be seasons which are awesome and you've also got to learn how to navigate those as well. They're both the same. So
Yeah.
that's a couple thoughts for the smaller side of things.
Mhm.
I could go into the bigger, you know, like larger scale kind of things too for different people if that would be helpful. I'm not sure. I don't know how much time we actually have. So obviously
Yeah.
we could keep you and I could probably talk for hours, but
I know. Maybe I'll ask you one more question,
yeah, go for it.
which I want to redirect it back to your situation, if you don't mind. I'd love to
Sure.
maybe put a microscope on it for a second, because you mentioned earlier, like I have my processes of LinkedIn comments, and I got my 20 qualified meetings per month. As
Yeah.
my target. Like, tell me more about that. I'd love to understand, what does a typical kind of day look like in your shoes as a salesperson.
Yeah.
How do you and what is maybe the most important thing, like the pillars that you think are
Mm.
that really dictate whether or not you have a successful month or quarter or year?
It is a great question because it always is varied. Um, I think like for me, I've really enjoyed like the tactical side of just running in a or working in a business, excuse me, running a business, all those types of things. And so I've really liked to be doing the work at the same time. Like I just like to roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty. I'm like not the guy that's going to sit in the ivory tower and just yell to orders kind of thing. I'm
Mhm.
way more of a like, get me on the field. Sure, yeah, I'll work on plays, run the practice. Like this is great, but like I want to like throw the pass and
Mm,
run down the field and actually be part of it. And so
mm,
um, I would say like that's just me. Like that's just fun for me and I enjoy it. There are some seasons where I get a lot of time to do that. There's other seasons where I'm pretty strapped for that, so I have to be open to having optics to seeing that.
mhm.
Um, I generally try to prospect a fair amount. Part of it is because I learn so much when I prospect,
Mm,
which then can help other people on the team. And so it doesn't mean I'm doing it at the scale that any of them are doing it. Doesn't mean I'm closing the same deals any of them are doing. But it really does help inform like where they're going and what they're doing and keeps me kind of like ear to the ground kind of thing.
yeah, makes sense.
Um, I've kind of watched agencies for a long time. And one of the things I learned early in agencies is it's a backwards organization. So if you think about corporations, like you work your way up, you're like a junior level person, you're kind of working your way up, maybe you're managing people, maybe you're then vice president or something, you keep working your way up. Well, every step you work your way up, you're further away from the customer. I would argue that it's the opposite or should be the opposite for agencies because most of the time, if you're starting out, you're the expert. People want to buy time from you. You start growing. You then hire the person you can afford, which is usually a junior person.
Mm,
You then pass the client to that person. They're disappointed because they want to work with a senior person. So keep playing that out as you're growing. And it's
mm,
like, I would say I've tried really hard to figure out how do you kind of continue to stay in the vein of, I want to keep staying like where the customers at. Like
mm.
I want to keep knowing what they're struggling with, the challenges they're at. I want to then be able to have empathy towards the sales guys that are also trying to close the deals and knowing how hard it is. So
Yeah.
again, it changes in different seasons, but I usually try to spend a fair amount of time prospecting. I run one-on-ones. I got to know you to grow you kind of thing. And so I'm trying to spend as much time as I can also with individuals
Mm,
because I just want to help them and help move them forward. And some of them are further in their sales career. Some of them are just starting in their sales career. Obviously, it takes a little more time, maybe at different people where they're at in their sales career, but always trying to figure out how to develop people and help them attain what they're trying to attain.
Yep.
So I spend a lot of time doing that. I'd say I spend a fair amount of time like cross company. And so what's going on in different programs or different products or those types of things. And so that takes up some of my week.
Mm.
Leadership meetings takes up some of my week. I am a little bit of a weird human because I do live in the Pacific time zone, but I work the Central time zone.
Mm.
So my day starts really early.
Mm.
And then I have teenagers, so it usually goes really late. So I feel at some point in my life that I'll probably catch up on sleep, but I'm not there yet. So, um, so usually I'll try honestly to respond to a bunch of messages and do some outreach and those types of things even before the day starts.
Mm.
And then, ideally I'm kind of keeping up with that, but usually then I'm on Zoom for hours at a time. Some seasons that is fatiguing and other seasons that gives me life. And then outside of that, I'm in office in Nashville like twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm spending a fair amount of time on an airplane back and forth too. So
Got
I
it.
know for some people, they're like, what are you doing? Didn't you sell an agency? Why are you doing this? Like, yes, I did. Don't know why I'm doing this. It's just fun. So
Yeah.
it's been enjoyable. Love the people I get to work with. So that's like a huge motivator for me of getting to keep doing what I'm doing. And then I'd say I would attribute just to kind of wrap, I would attribute a lot of the success I had as an agency to StoryBrand and the community of StoryBrand and the frameworks and in a lot of ways, the revenue we were able to generate from using those frameworks and processes and products and that kind of thing. And so it's been really cool to work for a company that I believe in and
Mm.
believe in what they do and have like real world, real life, kind of practice, if you will, of what the products that they use,
Mm.
can do for a business, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that part's been really fun, but that's kind of roughly my day. I don't know if I did a great job with that, but I get to wear a lot of hats. So it
Yeah. It sounds
oftentimes
like
feels
it.
like a blur. So
Yeah. It's cool. I'm definitely getting the sense that you're one that I like the fact that you want to stay connected to the weeds. You like the tactical stuff, and it
yeah,
sounds like that keeps you sharp and
sure.
allows you to serve others more because you
Yeah.
really get the joy and the fulfillment out of serving others. So
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. And like I said, some seasons I get more time in the weeds than others, but for the most part, I do try to figure out a way back there just because one, it's fun. I enjoy it. That's how I started. And then the other is exactly what you said. It just kind of helps you serve people a little bit more and keeps you connected with them, keeps you grounded pretty well. So
yeah, yeah. Where can people follow you? Give us a quick kind of promo for those that want to stay tuned and stay
for
connected.
sure. Yeah. Probably LinkedIn's probably honestly the best. It's easiest to reach out and that kind of thing. I'm usually there almost every day. Try to post content, respond to DMs, all that kind of stuff. Also, the StoryBrand.com website, so you'll see all the products that we sell. For the most part, when I'm talking about agencies, we certify guides and certified agencies. And then we're kind of part of our ecosystem, part of our community. We train them on how to, productize some of their services, implement the StoryBrand framework in their core set of offerings and that kind of thing as well. And that's kind of what I was talking about as far as like practice early on. That's what we did as an agency for like 8 years. We were part of that community. So
Mm,
that's a place to find a little more about that. But if you want to holler at me personally, LinkedIn's probably the place for it. So
awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Tyler, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing all the wisdom. Appreciate it,
Heck yeah,
man.
dude. Loved
Good
it. Super
talking.
fun.
Thank you for listening to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we go down the rabbit hole on the journey and motivations of creatives and entrepreneurs. Stay tuned for more stories to come. Until next time.